Welcome to Inside the Pickle Jar, a podcast where we dive into the wonderfully quirky world of neurodiversity. I'm Tonya Weaver, your friendly neighborhood relationship coach specializing in neurodiverse individuals and neurodivergent myself. From communication tips to managing those "did you really just say that" moments, every episode will share real-life stories, expert advice, and practical strategies to help you tackle obstacles and build stronger, more fulfilling connections. Listen on to Inside the Pickle Jar, where every connection matters, every pickle has its place. Today, we're diving into a topic that's very close to my heart: neurodiversity and my personal journey with autism. So let's start with the basics. What is neurodiversity? So, much like the term diversity, where we appreciate differences in social, ethnic, or cultural backgrounds, as well as different genders, sexual orientations, and other characteristics, neurodiversity is the concept that neurological differences like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and a few others are natural variations of the human brain, and that these differences are not deficits, but instead are rather unique ways of just thinking and experiencing the world. If we adopt this perspective, it would shift the focus from trying to fix individuals to understanding, embracing their unique strengths and challenges. Although, unlike other forms of diversity, those that are not wired to be ADHD, autistic, etc., are called neurotypical, and they fall into a descriptive bucket that basically says, you aren't dealing with these things, so you're considered typical versus diverse. So, be that as it may, 15 to 20% of the United States, and that's 2 in 10, are estimated to be neurodiverse, which is a significant number of people in any organization, school, or family. That just means in my own team of roughly 300 people, 45 to 60 people are feeling distracted, or struggling with social interactions, or having difficulty understanding how to read their work plan goals, or maybe even struggling just to read an email. Neurodiversity recognizes that everyone has a different way of processing information, communicating, and interacting with the world. It's about celebrating those differences and creating inclusive environments where everyone can thrive. The term itself acknowledges the vast array of differences in human brain function and behavioral traits. It emphasizes that these differences are natural variations rather than deficits or disorders. For example, neurodiverse individuals will have different ways of processing sensory input, information, emotions. Autistic individuals typically have a heightened sensitivity to sensory stimuli, like lights, sounds, and textures, especially socks. It always seems to be a thing. People with ADHD may process information quickly and have a high level of creativity and spontaneity. And individuals with dyslexia might actually excel in visual spatial tasks and problem solving, even though they find reading challenging. Communication can vary widely among neurodiverse individuals. Autistic individuals prefer direct and clear communication, sometimes finding nonverbal cues or implied meanings challenging. And I know this is true for me. I will sometimes ask if someone meant something different than what they said, if the literal meaning seems out of place. People with ADHD might be more expressive and energetic in their communication style, and those with social anxiety might prefer written communication over face-to-face interactions. The way neurodiverse individuals manage their interactions with their environment can also be unique. Routine and predictability are crucial for some, providing a sense of stability and control. Novelty and variety might be stimulating and engaging for others, and that helps them stay focused and motivated. And that can be said for all people. But the degree to which either routine or variety are appropriate for a neurodiverse person will be at the extreme ends of the spectrum. So for myself, I know that I need everything planned and scheduled on a calendar. The extreme variety I introduce to my life is actually a scheduled event. Talk about that more in a minute. Adaptations and accommodations can make a significant difference for those that get distracted easily or struggle with overwhelm, such as providing quiet spaces, flexible schedules, or alternative communication methods. Now, I'd like to share my personal journey with autism. Growing up, I always felt like an outsider to my classmates. I knew I was different from my peers, but initially I thought it was because my dad was weird. And I now know or suspect that he was undiagnosed autistic Asperger's. We were hippies and socially economically at the lower end of the scale. Being poor, we had pretty crappy clothes and packed all of our lunches. I showed up at school looking fairly outcast to begin with. However, I was also in my own reading group because I learned to read really young, call it like 4 or 5 years old, and just picked it up without any real teaching from my parents. I also tended to be years above my classmates in math and working in books well ahead of them. My dad was an engineer working for Shakespeare, a company that produced fishing poles and trolling motors. He later became an aerospace engineer working in his final days with Pratt& Whitney. I know I got my smarts from him, but I also got autism and low scoring for social intelligence from him. What's interesting is that the areas in math that I struggled with were those where there were public or social games around math and memorizing multiplication tables. I had a second grade teacher who liked to play a game with the kids, and it was a competition for who could say the answer to the multiplication problems faster. Faster the answer was the winner. The winner could move on to the next level. The more questions you answered correctly, gave you rules on your paper crown that each child had displayed around the room. Those types of engagements were horrific for me because the social anxiety and the fear of looking stupid clouded my thinking that I'm pretty sure I never ended up with any jewels in my crown for all of second grade. I was so embarrassed at my failure that I even attempted to get someone to whisper the answers to me. And the teacher overheard, and I was embarrassed even further for cheating. I felt terrible about being called out and for cheating, and it soured me so greatly and made me socially anxious even worse. Those same mysterious social norms that everyone seemed to get naturally bleed over into establishing friends. I really struggled understanding what the term best friend even meant. If a classmate would just hang out with me for an hour or two, playing outside or playing with dolls, I would ask them to be my best friend. I didn't understand that having a best friend just happens over time and isn't something you sign up for or commit to. Because social interactions were challenging and I often found comfort in routines and specific interests, I was a voracious reader and spent a lot of time in the school library. Most of the books I became interested in were mystery stories like Encyclopedia Brown and the Bobbsey Twins, but I also loved any Judy Blume books I could get my hands on. Typically, they were stories grades above me, but I found them incredibly supportive. So one day, after feeling like I had finished the library, I ran across a manners book. I discovered that I could read and memorize how to be with people. It actually worked. And I learned how to at least make adults happy because I understood how I was supposed to behave. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize I was learning to mask, just that I was learning how to fit in. I went to college and I got they call a CISQA degree, Computer Information Systems and Quantitative Analysis. Another weird, quirky, of course, STEM degree, and landed a job at Walmart as a programmer. And then later I worked at banking institutions where I programmed ATM machines, but in assembler, and became a systems engineer for a small company. But my social skills improved only marginally. I knew my manners, but understanding office dynamics and politics were really tricky for me because they weren't in any books, and nothing to tell me how to be a good coworker. I've been married twice and had multiple attempts at long-term relationships. Not knowing the social cues, especially from sociopaths, made me an easy mark for anyone looking to take advantage of a woman who just wanted to fit in and was willing to be whatever she needed to be to have a quote, friend. I was in a pickle jar and I couldn't read the label. It wasn't until later in life that I was diagnosed with autism, and that diagnosis made a huge difference in how I saw my childhood and all of my past. Understanding that I was autistic, and at the time they called that Asperger's, helped me make sense of my experiences and gave me the tools to navigate the world more effectively. I realized all of my difficulties at work and in all the relationships were the result of my brain wiring and not because it was defunct in some way. It reframed my experiences and, as such, helped me realize what it was that I did need to learn to fit in versus masking, and when I could be authentically me. I learned to embrace my unique way of thinking and to leverage my strengths, such as attention to detail and deep focus on topics I'm passionate about. I now have a very supportive and mentoring manager who is neurotypical and a partner who is also neurotypical and empathetic. Both of them are great resources for me to ask questions about what I heard or saw and how it should be perceived. They say you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I am now more careful about who gets in that circle. Also, my research on human behavior and social norms has been refined, and AI has especially gone a long way of informing me of how I'm being perceived outside of my own picture. So once I had my diagnosis, one of the biggest challenges I faced was finding a balance between fitting in and staying true to myself. Over time, I realized that authenticity is key. I didn't want to appear to be handicapped or less than, so I initially didn't tell anyone. There was so much stigma around neurodivergence in the generation I grew up in, and by my parents as well. I've learned that by being open about my autism, I can build more genuine connections and advocate for myself, and most importantly to me, others in the neurodiverse community. I am especially interested in the corporate DEI framework, since both of my sons are neurodivergent and have similar social intelligence issues. I want them and anyone else who's neurodivergent to have a great career in a supportive company with healthy relationships. Living with autism comes with its own set of challenges and rewards. For me, one of the most important aspects has been self awareness. Understanding my sensory sensitivities, social preferences, and cognitive patterns have allowed me to create strategies that work for me. Just knowing that I don't always get a joke or the innuendo informs me and reminds me to actually ask more questions. And because verbal cues are missing for me, I've learned a lot around microexpressions and body language. When I see some of those markers, I ask. I've also been privileged to be the certified Gallup Strengths coach for my team of 300 people. I earned a stellar reputation for knowing how to read the tea leaves of relationships between managers and their employees or of teams. I've been told I'm spooky on how I know what the issues are just by looking at the assessments. The secret? Gallup Strengths has given me the algorithm on human behavior, and there's nothing I love more than a good math problem. Talk about Gallup Strengths and how I use it to help myself and others in later episodes. So there are many things I use to help with my distractibility and my tendency to perseverate. I think they would be helpful for those that struggle with those issues. For example, I use visual schedules to manage my time and reduce anxiety. I'm a big planning person, and planning helps me manage my need to have predictability. I look like I live a random life, but it's actually heavily managed and scheduled. I also practice mindfulness and self care to maintain my mental and emotional well being. I've also always used regular exercise, also to extremes, as an outlet, and we'll talk about those in a later episode. But all of these strategies have been instrumental to helping me navigate both personal and professional environments. Another key aspect is building a support network. That's been really hard for me as I tend to be singularly focused on only one person, like a partner or a spouse. I've ebbed and flowed with having a support network and have resorted to sometimes hiring my network. Think therapists, curated medical personnel. For example, I'll only have a female doctor and a female dentist. I went through a long period where I had a big running support community until COVID splintered the group. And we can talk about that also in a later episode. I do know that surrounding myself with understanding and supportive individuals has made a significant difference. Whether it's friends, family, or colleagues, having someone or people, a whole group who accept and appreciate my neurodiversity has been incredibly empowering. My current manager and my partner have been instrumental in helping me build my knowledge outside of what I've learned and studied. So before we wrap up, I'd like to share some tips for embracing neurodiversity, whether you're neurodiverse yourself or supporting someone who is. You might be a manager, a partner, a spouse, a child, or the parent of someone who is neurodiverse. And just know that it's important to celebrate the differences. Celebrating neurodiversity means recognizing and valuing the unique traits and contributions the neurodiverse bring to work and home. Neurodiverse individuals often have exceptional skills and talents, like I mentioned before about myself, like attention to detail, innovative thinking, or deep expertise in specific areas. Also, different ways of thinking can lead to creative solutions and new approaches to problems. I love brainstorming and am usually not attached to my ideas. I just like an idea engine that plants seeds for future consideration and development. Plus, an inclusive environment fosters a sense of belonging and respect, where everyone, not just the neurodiverse, feel valued for who they are. But how do we create that inclusive environment? First off, education and awareness. Promoting understanding of neurodiversity through training and open discussions leads to awareness and compassion. Additionally, adopting flexible policies and parallel career paths will be instrumental in the workforce. Implementing policies that accommodate different needs, such as flexible work hours or remote work options, and creating career paths where promotion doesn't always mean managing people. And that means the neurodiverse employees can advance in their careers doing more challenging work instead of managing challenging individuals. Also, providing access to resources and support such as mentoring programs, mental health services, and assistive technologies, as well as designing spaces and processes that are accessible and welcoming to all. For example, considering sensory sensitivities and communication preferences. By embracing neurodiversity, we can build richer, more innovative, more compassionate communities. This approach not only benefits the neurodiverse individuals, but also enhances the overall environment for everyone. It sends a clear message that you can truly bring your authentic self to work. Some final notes on neurodiversity and what you can do to support the neurodiverse. 1, educate yourself. Learn about different neurodiverse conditions and perspectives. Understanding is the first step towards acceptance. 2, create inclusive environments, whether at home, work, or in social settings. Strive to create spaces where neurodiverse individuals feel comfortable and valued. 3, celebrate the strengths. Focus on the unique strengths and talents that neurodiverse individuals bring to the table. 4, practice patience and empathy. Everyone's journey is different. Be patient and empathetic towards the challenges and triumphs of neurodiverse individuals. And 5, and most importantly, advocate for change. Use your voice to advocate for policies and practices that support neurodiversity in all areas of life. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Inside the Pickle Jar. I hope my story and insights have shed some light on the importance of neurodiversity and the unique experiences of living with autism. Remember, embracing neurodiversity is not just about acceptance. It's about celebrating the rich tapestry of all human minds. And if you enjoy this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with others who might benefit from our discussions. You can also follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram, as well as sign up for my Taco Tuesday newsletter for more insights and updates. Reach out to me for coaching and let me help you with all of your needs. So until next time, stay curious and keep celebrating neurodiversity.